What would it take for you to walk away from a 125-pound million empire you built over 13 years? For KSI, the answer came on May 31st, 2026. 11 minutes of video announcing that he's done. What nobody is talking about is what he actually left behind. A fried chicken chain expanding across 3 continents. A vodka brand, a clothing company, a venture capital fund. All of it still running, all of it still carrying his name. And not one of the 6 people left inside it saw it coming. On May 31st, 2026, KSI uploaded a video to his 18.4 million subscribers. He called it the hardest video he had ever made in his life. He said he had gone back and forth on the decision for months. He said nothing bad had happened. He said the decision was completely his own. By the time the video ended, he was no longer a member of the Sidemen. The 6 members who remained posted a joint statement the same day. 4 sentences. The one that mattered was the second. This came as a surprise to us. Not a planned transition or a negotiated exit, but a surprise. Inside a group that had spent 13 years building a holding company, an entertainment company, a ventures company, a clothing brand, a restaurant chain, and a vodka label. All of them registered at Companies House, all of them still active. What you're about to see is not a story about a YouTuber leaving a friend group. It's a story about what happens when the most valuable person inside a 125-pound million business decides, quietly and without warning, that they're finished, and what the structure left behind is built to handle when that happens. The Sidemen did not begin as a business. They began as a joke. October 19th, 2013. 6 young men who had been playing Grand Theft Auto online together created a Rockstar Games social club group called the Ultimate Sidemen. The name itself was the punchline. Everyone else in the group was a sideman to KSI, who at that point already had over 1 million YouTube subscribers, while the others were still building. KSI was the draw. The rest, by their own admission, were the supporting cast. Harry Lewis joined in January 2014, meeting Josh Bradley at a FIFA gaming tournament in New York City, making him the last and youngest to enter what became the founding era lineup. 7 members total: KSI, Mini Minter, Zerka, TBJZL, Bazinga, Vicstar123, and W2S. No contracts, no management, no corporate structure. Just 7 friends making videos. The thing that separated the Sidemen from every other YouTube collective that formed during that era, and dozens of them formed, was one decision they made early that most groups never make. They agreed to split everything equally. Not based on subscriber counts, not based on who brought in the most views. 7 equal shares across every business venture, every sponsorship deal that came through the group, every revenue stream attached to the Sidemen name. Vicstar confirmed it publicly years later in terms that left no ambiguity. We split our income equally. It's about building a legacy as a group, not individuals. That decision is the reason the group survived long enough to build anything worth talking about. It removed the single most corrosive force inside creator collectives, the conversation about who deserves more. It also, as it turns out, created a structure with a specific and significant vulnerability, one that May 31st, 2026 exposed in ways the business is still working through. What the equal split produced in those early years was something that looked less like a business arrangement and more like a functional immune system, Other collectives fractured along predictable lines. The bigger member outgrew the smaller ones. The money conversation started. People left. The sidemen watched it happen to groups around them and kept going. The arrangement created a floor. Every member, regardless of their individual trajectory, was guaranteed the same share of whatever the collective generated. For members whose personal channels were smaller, that floor was significant. For KSI, whose personal channel was already substantially larger than the group's combined output at certain points, the equal split was a deliberate financial concession, one he made and maintained for over a decade. That concession deserves context. KSI's individual YouTube channel passed 1 million subscribers before the Sidemen had formally launched their shared channel. By the time the group incorporated their first company in 2014, he was already operating at a scale that most of the other members wouldn't reach individually for years. The equal split, in practice, meant that KSI was consistently subsidizing the group's commercial returns through the simple fact of being who he was. His name brought the brand deals. His audience gave the shared channel its initial distribution. His boxing career, which began in 2018 with a white-collar fight against Joe Weller and escalated through 2 headline bouts against Logan Paul, watched by millions, kept the Sidemen name in mainstream media long after YouTube had started to feel like a ceiling for British creators. None of this is a grievance. There is nothing in the record to suggest KSI ever raised it as one. But it is context that the business record makes visible in ways the content never did, because the content was designed to present 7 equals. The filings tell a more complicated story. Sidemen Clothing Limited was incorporated in December 2014. The initial brand value of that company was built almost entirely on the recognition of one member's name. The equal split meant the other 6 benefited proportionally from equity they did not individually generate. Again, not a grievance, a structure. And like all structures, it worked well until it was tested by circumstances it wasn't originally designed for. The test came in stages. First, the businesses, then the external investment, then the CEO. Then, on May 31, 2026, the departure. By 2019, the Sidemen were no longer just content creators. Sidemen Holdings Limited was incorporated on July 30th of that year, a private limited company registered in Worthing, West Sussex, classified under activities of holding companies. Sidemen Entertainment Limited followed in December 2019, registered for video production activities. Sidemen Ventures Limited came in June 2021. Sidemen Clothing Limited had been incorporated years earlier, in December 2014, almost from the moment the group realized the name itself had commercial value. By the time most people were paying attention to the Sidemen as a cultural phenomenon, the legal infrastructure for a vertically integrated media company had already been quietly assembled around them. The businesses that followed reflected a group that understood something most creator collectives never figure out. Content is a marketing channel, not the product. The product is the brand, and the brand, if managed correctly, can outlast the content. Sides, the fried chicken restaurant chain, launched in November 2021 through a partnership with Hero Brands, a Scottish food franchise specialist. 19 Vodka launched in 2022, the Roman numerals, a direct reference to the date of the group's founding, October 19th, encoded into the label of a bottle of spirits. The charity football match at Wembley Stadium in 2025 drew 90,000 spectators and raised £4.7 million for charitable causes. A Netflix documentary, a Netflix reality series, a subscription platform called Side Plus, a venture capital fund, 50 employees under the management company Arcade, which received a seven-figure strategic investment from Lumina Media in September 2025 to accelerate expansion across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. The scale of what the group had built by late 2025 is worth pausing on because it sets up everything that follows. The 2025 charity match at Wembley Stadium is the cleanest single data point. 90,000 people in a stadium to watch 7 YouTubers play football. £4.7 million raised for charitable causes in a single afternoon. Those numbers are not YouTube numbers. They are live entertainment numbers, the kind that stadium promoters and arena bookers and television executives pay attention to, because they represent something that most internet-native properties never achieve: the ability to move a physical audience at scale. The Sidemen had built that, not through any single viral moment or algorithmic surge, but through 13 years of consistent output, consistent brand management, and a corporate structure sophisticated enough to convert audience loyalty into institutional revenue. The Netflix deal is the other data point. Inside, their reality series was not a one-off. It became a franchise. A third season was confirmed. Sidemen Productions was launched alongside it. The group was no longer licensing their name to platforms. They were producing content for them as a company with a production arm. That is a materially different relationship with the entertainment industry than the one they started with in 2013. And it represents years of deliberate positioning by the management team at Arcade. By the end of 2025, the Sidemen were operating at a level of institutional sophistication that had no precedent in British creator history. They had external investment. They had a Netflix franchise. They had a restaurant chain targeting 200 global locations. They had a subscription platform. They had a venture capital fund. They had a vodka brand in every Wetherspoon in the country. And they were doing all of it while still uploading Sidemen Sunday every week, maintaining the content output that kept the audience engaged and the brand commercially relevant. The machine had never been running better, which is precisely when the person who built the engine decided he was done operating it. In January 2026, 4 months before KSI announced his departure, Sidemen Entertainment appointed its first external CEO. Victor Bengtsson, promoted from managing director, took the role as the company was scaling toward what Arcade's founders described as an institutionalized operation built to survive individual members' careers. That appointment is worth sitting with for a moment. January 2026. A CEO installed to build something that doesn't depend on any single person. 4 months later, the single person the whole thing was built around announced he was leaving. Here's where it becomes important to understand who KSI actually was inside this structure, because the equal revenue split, for all its wisdom as a cohesion mechanism, obscured a financial reality that was anything but equal. KSI's personal net worth in 2026 is estimated at approximately £75 to £100 million. The next wealthiest Sidemen member sits at a fraction of that figure. The gap exists almost entirely because of one decision KSI made in January 2022, independent of the group, that turned out to be one of the most lucrative commercial partnerships in creator history. His former boxing rival Logan Paul called him. The proposition was a sports drink. KSI said yes. Prime Hydration launched in January 2022. In its first year, it generated $250 million in revenue. By 2023, it was tracking toward $1.2 billion in annual sales. Congo Brands, the Louisville-based company that owns the parent entity, holds a controlling stake. Logan Paul holds 20%. KSI holds 20%. Forbes ranked KSI as the second highest earning content creator on the planet in 2023, behind only Mr. Beast, with annual earnings of $24 million that year. Prime, not the Sidemen, is what put him in a different financial category to every other member of the group. Prime is also, as of 2024, in serious commercial trouble. UK revenue collapsed from £112 million in 2023 to £33 million in 2024, a 70% decline. Profits fell 91.6%. U.S. sales dropped 40% in the first half of 2024 against a category where most competitors were still growing. By June 2025, British supermarkets were selling Prime for 31 pence a bottle in clearance bins. Bottles that at peak hype were reselling among school children for £100 each. KSI's most valuable asset outside the Sidemen was deteriorating at the same time he was, by his own account, burning out inside it. Now consider the timeline of what was happening to the Sidemen business itself during this same period. Sides, the restaurant chain, has been expanding. 15 new locations planned for 2026 alone, with new sites targeting India, Malaysia, Singapore, and the UAE, building toward a stated goal of 200 global locations within 10 years. 19 Vodka expanded into J.D. Wetherspoon pubs nationwide in March 2024. Sidemen Clothing opened its second physical store, a 4,500 square foot location in Birmingham, in October 2024. The 2025 charity match at Wembley raised £4.7 million. A third season of Inside, their Netflix reality series, was confirmed. The group's management company received a 7-figure external investment. A CEO was hired. The machine was accelerating, and KSI was running it at 100 miles an hour by his own description, while managing his own career, his boxing commitments, his music, a minority stake in Dagenham and Redbridge Football Club, his role as a judge on ITV's Britain's Got Talent, and a 20% equity position in a beverage company that was in the middle of a strategic review after losing 70% of its revenue in a single year. He retired from boxing in early 2026. 3 months later, he retired from the Sidemen. The question that the business record raises, and that KSI's video did not answer, is a structural one. In a 7-way equal split model, every member receives the same share of group revenue, regardless of what they contribute individually. That arrangement works cleanly when all 7 members are actively participating in content and lending their brand to the collective output. It becomes considerably more complicated when one member is generating disproportionate external interest in the group's commercial ventures, not because of the Sidemen, but because of who they individually are. Every restaurant that carries the Sides branding benefits from KSI's name recognition as much as it does from Mini Minters or Vicstars. Every bottle of 19 vodka sold at a Wetherspoon pub is partially being sold on the awareness that KSI helped create. The equal split was designed to prevent fracture. What it may not have been designed to account for is what happens when the person generating the most external value decides they've had enough. The 6 members' statement said the decision came as a surprise. What the business filings show is that the infrastructure had been quietly evolving since January 2026, in ways that suggest the possibility of KSI's departure was at least being planned around, even if his announcement on May 31st was not anticipated. The CEO appointment at Sidemen Entertainment. The arcade restructure, which formalized the roles of founders Jordan Schwarzenberger and Sam Ewens, and brought in a head of original video from News UK to lead on IP development. The Lumina Media investment explicitly framed around building creator-independent IP, content and brands that generate value regardless of which specific creator is attached to them. The Netflix franchise built around Inside, a format that doesn't require KSI's participation. Arcade's stated goal? To become the leading creator-first platform, building lasting IP that drives conversation and culture. Not creator-dependent, creator-first. The distinction matters. The group that said it was surprised by KSI's departure had, in the months immediately preceding it, quietly restructured their management company, appointed a CEO, received external investment, and launched IP development initiatives specifically designed to reduce dependency on individual personalities. Whether that constitutes preparation or coincidence is a question the documents don't fully answer. What the documents show is a business making the right moves to survive exactly the kind of event that just happened. That is the story the business record tells, and it is a different story to the one told in 11 minutes on YouTube on May 31st. KSI said he needed peace of mind. He said he had been pulled in too many directions. He said his family, his partner, his health needed his attention. Every one of those things may be true, and nothing in the documentary record contradicts them. What the record adds is context. A man managing a 20% stake in a company that lost 70% of its revenue in a year. A man with no more boxing career. A man operating inside a corporate structure that generates an estimated £37 million annually, split 7 ways, while his external brand valuation dwarfs every other member of the group combined. A man who, by January 2026, had watched his management company install a CEO and begin the process of building a business that could function without him specifically. There is a version of this story in which KSI looked at everything he was managing, everything the Sidemen machine required of him to keep running at the level it was running, and made a rational calculation. The return on his time inside the group structure no longer justified what the group structure cost him. Peace of mind is not a small thing, but it is also not a complete explanation for walking away from co-ownership of 15 restaurant openings scheduled across 3 continents in the same calendar year. The 6 members who remain have said the decision doesn't change anything for them. They plan to continue. The businesses are still active. Sides is still expanding. 19 Vodka is still on shelves. Arcade is still operational. Victor Bengtsson is still the CEO of Sidemen Entertainment. What nobody has addressed yet, not KSI, not the remaining members, not the management company, is the question of his equity. What happens to KSI's ownership stake in Sidemen Holdings Limited, Sidemen Entertainment Limited, Sidemen Ventures Limited, Sidemen Clothing Limited? Does he remain a shareholder in businesses he's no longer publicly associated with? Does he sell? Does a buyout occur? Is there a shareholder agreement that governs exactly this scenario? One member departing while the enterprise continues. The Companies House filings show all entities remain active as of the date of this video. The next accounts for Sidemen Holdings are due in September 2026. Those filings, when they arrive, will tell a version of this story that no YouTube video can. That's the part that doesn't have an ending yet. KSI uploaded his video. He said what he needed to say. The business kept moving. And somewhere in a filing cabinet in Worthing, West Sussex, there are documents that will eventually answer the questions his 11-minute announcement did not. The broader question this story raises is one that goes well beyond KSI and the Sidemen specifically. What happens when the infrastructure of a creator-driven business grows sophisticated enough to outlast the creators themselves, but the creators haven't actually left yet? The Sidemen's management company was explicitly building toward that model. Creator-independent IP, institutional backing, professional management structure, Netflix franchises. The goal was always to build something that survives individual careers. And now, for the first time, they are going to find out whether they actually did. The Sides restaurants will still open. The vodka will still be stocked. The clothing brand will still drop its seasonal collections. The charity match will still sell out Wembley. The question is whether any of it carries the same commercial weight when the person whose name started as a joke, the person everyone else was supposedly a sideman to, is no longer inside the room. That's the question the business will answer over the next 18 months. And it's the one nobody on either side of this story has been willing to put a number